Welcome to A Better HR Business, the podcast that looks at how HR consultants and HR tech firms grow their businesses and how they help their employers to get the best out of their people. Remember, for show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Okay, let's get started.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Great to have you along. And I'm really looking forward to today's conversation with Beales. Is a fascinating guy. He's based in beautiful Nottingham, and he is the founder of a very cool company called Sidedoor Studio. And they connect visual storytelling with learning design to help people to upskill and businesses to perform better. So it's about creating learning that feels relevant, authentic, and engaging. And they work with well-known brands like Carlsberg, Britvic on day one inductions and so on. Beales, he combines his experience as a brand marketer and visual storyteller with expertise as a senior academic at leading universities. We're going to get into all of that in just a moment. But firstly, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, hi. Thanks. Lovely to be here.
So I gave a quick snapshot, but let's start with Sidedoor Studio. Do you want to tell us what is and what does Sidedoor Studio do?
I think it's kind of almost a happy coincidence of a number of different things. My background is marketing. I've always just been interested in storytelling and persuasion and sales. And so I had a marketing business for quite a while. I worked for, different media organizations for a while. I kind of weirdly got into the fashion industry, and then I ended up being an academic teaching marketing. And I think all of those things kind of came together where I realized kind of towards the end of my time at various different universities, I just felt that a lot of it didn't work. A lot of learning didn't work. So when I was at university or lecturing, I had various different roles, but I was kind of principal lecturer in different things, mainly in marketing. I kind of got this idea. I've always liked frameworks. So I've always liked simplifying things, demystifying things. And part of my role was to try and do some research. So I just came up with this soft skills framework and tried to develop that. Over the last, I think, year, what we've realized really is that we focus on the B2B as the agency. So what we believe is that a lot of corporate training, learning and development, upskilling, whatever you want to call it, doesn't work. Largely because it's very much from the top down. It's very imposed, doesn't feel very personal. We were lucky about a year and a half ago, we got a Creative Catalyst grant from Innovate UK, and that allowed us to do some research into learning and how people learn and what they feel about it. And, out of that kind of really came the idea that a couple of things, but very much about habit-based learning. Essentially, we focus things on soft skills, or I call them human skills, and habit-based learning. But also, we're very big on helping people learn how to learn. We try and help people and organizations fulfill their potential. And we do that by reconnecting with their human skills and by developing habits that build lifelong learning. So how can you help people genuinely be conscious, observant, challenge, ask questions? How do you create content that does that? And I think that's where the marketing stuff comes in, which is about telling stories and making it engaging. And then the learning, the pedagogy, hootagogy stuff comes in, which is like, how do you make this stick?
It's a good one, though, because I've seen all manners of learning development, corporate culture change, and so on. And so I've definitely seen let's stick up some posters and have a town hall meeting where the CEO tells everyone, thou shalt do this and thou shalt do that. And I've done safety audits, which was about making sure that workplaces are safe, but really all you're doing is going around trying to catch someone doing the wrong thing and filling in a form for that, which is a terrible way to do culture change. So it sounds like your approach with Sidedoor Studio is around, you mentioned the word persuasion and influence and making things stick. It's around getting mindset and cultural change that people understand, but they want to do and continue doing. Is that right?
I like frameworks and models. I think there's this saying that all models are wrong, but some of them are useful. So I developed this model called PAIRS. Essentially, it's like prepare, engage, apply, reflect, strengthen. And I started to use it with some of my students, and we've started to use it in some of the content that we're creating. So basically, if you relate that to an individual, unless you prepare to learn and you decide that you want to learn and you're motivated and you understand why you're doing it and why it matters to you, you're not really going to go learn. The brain is designed to forget. So in order to create good learning, you've got to create learning that goes deep. And for it to go deep, it has to feel personal, authentic, and it has to matter to you. So the preparing bit, for example, of pairs is people don't go to the gym and not warm up and just start. But in learning, we just go bam. To understand, say, for example, with prepare, why does this matter to you? What does success look like? How are you going to be able to use it? If you do a very simple little thing like free writing, or you do like some kind of, motivational statement or whatever, the brain will kind of go, okay, this is important. Let's sit up and take some notice. Yeah. So the next part of that is engage. How do you learn as an individual? We all learn in different ways, and yet we have one size fits all, which doesn't work. Yeah. So the engage part of it is, how do you learn best, and how are you going to make this have meaning to you? Do you like to kind of cram stuff and then come back and revisit it? Do you like to learn in little chunks? Do you like to do it like this? And then apply is like how you're going to use it. Reflect is how you're going to remember it and retain it and reflect on it and then bring it back when you need it. And then the last one is S, which is strengthen, which is how you're going to build on this so it becomes habit-based, lifelong learning, peer learning, mentors, that kind of thing. The half-life of hard skills is declining massively, and AI is obviously massively involved. So the soft skills stay with you forever. So if you're curious, or you're observant, or you've got good critical thinking, or you know how to collaborate, those work anywhere. So say, for example, to give you a real world example, with one of our companies, what we're doing is we're using a drone, but it's a first person view. So basically it seems like you're flying through the space. Because if you then show somebody in a high vis jacket, you're immediately thinking that that's them, not you. Then you come to a hotspot and there's a problem, or a scenario, or something needs to be explained, or there's a process. In that case, we use interactivity and motion graphics, because then it's about problem solving, gamifying it. You're engaged in it, you're involved.
The drone example is a good one, because we've all seen corporate videos where you're looking at someone in a high-vis jacket and it's about them and what they do, and, oh no, what an idiot, they're not looking out for that forklift, whatever it is, but you're not putting yourself in their shoes. So the drone switches around and puts yourself in their shoes and you experience what's going on. I'm curious, who would be your ideal clients or customers, and for what sort of use cases or situations?
We do work with some bigger companies, but we tend to be focusing on companies that I would say are still SMEs, but they're kind of like, maybe 10 to 50 million. That's still an SME. But actually, we're doing a project in a couple of weeks with an organization that is, relatively small. And we're doing like some kind of shadowing of some health and safety work. But then we're essentially trying to turn the physical into digital in an interesting way. And we also have two sides. We've got the external side. So we do a lot of promotions, recruitment videos, primers, almost like the little thing you have on your website, kind of like, this is what we do in 60 seconds, almost like a video elevator pitch. And actually that often is what gets us into clients, actually, by having the kind of more marketing stuff. And then when we get in, they kind of realize that actually there are probably other needs within it. It tends to go one way or the other. So I think from the aspect of talking about getting more business, we either go in and we're like a marketing agency that helps them do promotional communication brand stuff, or we go in and we're like a L&D agency who does training and upskilling and events and that kind of thing. But also, like I was saying, we're now targeting people who are just much more able to make a decision much more quickly. Working with large organizations, it can take a year. But whereas we're going to people who are essentially going, okay, we've got a board of directors. We know there's a need. We know we're having issues with recruitment or retention or upskilling or promotion or whatever. This isn't going to cost that much to start us off. Let's go for it. Then you build it from there. And it's much more fluid. The other thing is that you're not ending up kind of with creativity by committee. Like if they trust us that we can come up with a creative solution, we're not imposing it on them. We're trying to work out the solution together. Recently, for some reason, a lot of people almost want to kind of create almost like mini dramas or stories or whatever. It's like, that can be good, but it can also be dreadful. Like if you do that badly, it can be really bad, So it's like, how can we do this in a way that is going to fulfill your vision and solve your problem? But at the same time, we as storytellers, and also from a technical perspective, filming it, lighting it, motion graphics, animation, whatever it is, how can we make that work? I think a lot of it for me is about collaborating with our clients. And I put a huge amount of store in the context, in the research. So like, say, for example, with a number of our clients, we're doing health and safety. I want to go on the courses I want to go on the existing ones. I want to shadow people. I want to get in the truck or get the forklift. I want to be there on the ground to understand them as an audience and what they engage with. We've got one client who, we've got a lot of people on the road. It's like, well, let's make a radio station for them.
Wow.
And also, I really believe as well in social learning. I don't believe in formal learning so much. So this is not going to be radio station, learn to do this. It's going to be like, okay, here are some stories. Here are people who've been through it. But also it's going to be entertainment, engagement. It's going to kind of like be like, you want to hear from like Doris, the tea lady, like why she's been at the company for 30 years or, it's like stories.
And I've experienced this myself through the HR consultancy years ago of going for big companies, and there'll be big projects and stuff. But yeah, it'd take 12 months and, we pay on 90 days or more.
Yeah.
But having made that switch to smaller organizations that can move faster and stuff, that's one thing to say, we're going to go for them. How do you actually find them from a sales and marketing perspective? How do you get in front of them and start those conversations?
Something that's been brilliant for us, and I was very skeptical because I'd been along to a few breakfasts like a few years ago, the East Midlands Chamber of Commerce, and they're actually the largest in the UK. And they have so many summits. They have manufacturing, advanced skills, employment practice, law. They're brilliant. Like the policy guys there, the president there, got to know them a bit. They genuinely care about business and about supporting people get new business. So I think that's been a really good one. I guess the thing that we're actually moving away from is actually things like social media marketing so much, in that we tried to get new business through LinkedIn and we just don't really get it. I think that we are going to treat LinkedIn more as a kind of a social media rather than just a business thing. I have it again as another framework I developed, which is this thing called 3 I's. So I talk about insights, innovation, and inspiration. So basically, I want our content to have one of those things. Like I want it to give something, add value. I don't want it to just be, I am here, listen to me. Increasingly, what we're doing actually is we're doing more things like we're putting on quite a lot of events. I really like puns for some reason. So in Nottingham, there's a phrase called A Up My Duck. We've put on a series of events called AI Up My Duck, which is basically about the creative industries and what's happening with AI. We've started another one, which is actually, call it Sidedoor Social. We had open submissions. We very much said it's show and tell passion projects. It's not commercial. It's just like whatever stage you're at. But that really worked for us. Like within 3 weeks, we got 10,000 views on our Instagram. Just for this one, we set it up, And Bo, who I work with, who's a designer, he got 26,000 on his own.
Wow.
I think my advice in many ways, and this is why I like to disrupt stuff, is just make stuff that's interesting that people engage with and just see what happens.
You talked about the chambers of commerce, which they're everywhere. So people listening to this will find that interesting. You do a lot of things. You've got a lot of different angles. Do you have an elevator pitch? Because those sort of things, you're moving, you're mingling, you've got a minute to say something. What do you do?
I think the main thing really is it's about creating content that helps people fulfill their potential. And through that, businesses perform better. And the way we do that is primarily we use video, we use audiovisual storytelling. It's basically that idea about how do you get somebody to care? Like if they don't care, it's not going to stick. You've got to get the hook in the beginning to just even get them to pay attention. And then you've got to keep them, and then you've got to try and get them to get engaged and involved. And that's all storytelling. But also you've got to try and mix that with doing something that they may well feel resistant to, which is learning and changing. But if you have those human skills, then you'll be much more fit for purpose than if you just essentially learned something that is going to be replaced by AI fairly soon.
That makes sense. For people who are listening to this who would be running either an L&D consulting firm or an HR-related consultancy, what would be your advice on how to market or grow their business through the marketing side of things?
One of the things that we realized through the Chamber of Commerce is there's a lot of business on your doorstep. We're in Nottingham, and we naturally think that the money is in London or down south or whatever. But we realized that there's a lot of people within the Midlands. There's a lot of business there. It's just how you kind of get through the door. I don't love networking events when they're a bit naff, but actually just going along to things and engaging with people. And I think particularly for younger people as well, is just being brave, just walking up to somebody going, hey, I see you do this, I do that, like we do this. And it's how do you start that conversation? So digitally, I think it has to be, you've got to say interesting things, or you've got to connect with people in a way that matters to them. In person, I think it's about listening to people, trying to understand, like trying to connect, not necessarily being out there just to sell to them, but just being interested in what they do. It's reconnecting with being human and recognizing that, I mean, there's such cliche about HR in business, but it is about people and how you connect with people. But also just go local, start small, because if you identify people who are small but growing and you grow with them, then your business will grow. We've got a number of people now who we're starting to work with who are actually really are scaling quite quickly, and then we'll scale with them.
I like that. It's good advice. If people want to learn more about you or about Sidedoor Studio, what should they do next?
So we're Sidedoor.studio is our website, and my personal one is Beales.com. So what we tend to do is for the agency, that's through Sidedoor Studio. And for things like workshops, it's through Beales.com.
All right. So if you're listening to this on the go, check the show notes, but we'll have Sidedoor.studio website there and then Beales.com, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So they'll be in there, and I'll also put your LinkedIn profile there in case people want to connect there. But otherwise, fantastic. I love what you've done, and I love the different approach to make corporate learning, engagement, upskilling of the workforce a much more interesting, engaging, and sticking. Sticky, exactly. So wonderful. Yeah. Love what you do. Thank you so much for sharing your story today, Si.
Really, really great to speak to you. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Thanks for joining us today on A Better HR Business, the podcast that explores the world of HR consulting and HR tech businesses. For show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Remember to subscribe and share the show with any friends who are busy growing a HR business. Thanks, and see you next time.